we are getting into our session where we help you really manage that money. And I say, yeah, they may feel more like pennies these days, but the important thing is understanding how to make it work for your circumstances. So we continue our session, which focuses on surviving and thriving after losing your job. We started this session last Monday, and Crystal Howell, chartered professional accountant and internal auditor, is back with us this morning. Great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, everybody. Shane, welcome back to the land of Barbados.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You're dealing with a really difficult topic this morning. You mentioned, Cassandra, it started last week. I can imagine a number of people, thousands of people losing their jobs in this climate. What do you do to manage those financial resources, limited financial resources you may have to navigate this time? And then, of course, you'll be looking for work. And you have to support your family.
It is a difficult time, and thanks to our friends, the Chartered Professional Accountants of Canada and Barbados, they have put together some material to help us to navigate that difficult path. And going through the materials, it actually focuses equally in terms of the mental aspect of dealing with losing your job as much as trying to deal with the financial, which I think is excellent, because oftentimes we ignore how stressful a situation like this can be, and the reactions that we would feel it is tough. It is a significant amount of emotional stress and confusion that you would have to go through. As human beings, we need to be able to support ourselves and support our families, and having that ability taken away and having debts and obligations facing you that aren't going to go away because you lost your job, it is definitely going to be a stressful time. So we want you to know that you are not alone, especially now in the time of pandemic. You are not alone. Millions of people around the world are facing this situation. And it's going to come along with feelings of depression, panic, self-doubt, and fear. Lots of negative emotions are going to become very normal for you. So the important thing to do is to acknowledge this and not to pretend as though you're not going through this stressful and emotional time. Is very similar to a grieving process, and your stress is going to be very similar to that of the death of a loved one or a divorce. So it's no small emotional trial to go through. That's the first thing we want you to be able to acknowledge, so that you can take some time to contemplate and reflect on this very real situation for you, so that you can identify your strengths going forward. And if you need to meet with any friends or mentors, so that you can have some discussions about what it is that you're feeling and going through and the plans that you have to move forward, do so.
Yeah. Okay, so once you've accepted what the situation is and you intend to have a solution and not let the situation bog you down, because that could very easily happen when people cannot see the light at the end of the tunnel. Once you've determined that, what should your next steps be in terms of looking at the money and following that and making it turn into something that can help your situation?
Well, the first thing you do is to make a plan. You have to prepare so that you can avoid getting overwhelmed. So you will make a list of what needs to be done, such as gathering your financial information to prepare your cash inflows and outflows. And I would have actually done this for a few friends where in certain situations they would have received severance, they may have had savings put down, they had their financial obligations, whether it was outstanding loans or debts, and their general day-to-day spending. So we would have sat down and gone through all of that information, looked to see how long they would have been able to survive with different scenarios, because you can't just have one scenario, because life doesn't work that way. You have to look for the best case, the likely case, and the absolute worst case scenarios to see how long the money you have. So that's the first thing that I would recommend persons doing, along with taking care of your mental health, whether that's getting as much exercise as possible, even if that means taking a walk, meditating, because you want to make sure that you can remain as calm as possible in a stressful time like this. So the first thing
Right.
definitely is to get your financial information in order so that you know what you're working with.
Mm, well, that's a good place to start. What we'll do, Crystal, we want to spend some more time with you getting that necessary help. You spoke about this plan, and I guess for some people, would want to understand what are some of the essentials that you may want to put on that list that they will be spending their money
Yeah.
on, and what are some of the things that they may want that they may have to turn a blind eye to. So we'll take a break here and talk a bit more about that on the other side of it.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
19 minutes away from the hour of 7, and our internal auditor Crystal Howell is helping us manage those pennies for those of you who may have been furloughed or are now on the breadline and trying to just navigate these times. But we also want you to thrive as well coming out of your situation. So, looking at those essentials, because I guess that is what you'll be down to when you get that severance package. You don't see that money and say, yeah, I have money to spend, not at all. Help us to understand how do you manage with those resources that you have received in terms of severance or whatever payment that you've received from the company that you were employed at, and how do you go? What will be some of your next steps, especially in terms
Right.
of spending?
Yes. So I really want to emphasize that part because I have had persons, once they receive the severance in their hand, it's sometimes a lot more money than they would have been working with before. And persons often forget that it's supposed to tide you over until you can find something else. So I've had persons, once they had that severance in their hand, they spent it as though they still had a job and it disappeared very quickly, and I don't want that to be happening to persons. So the first thing I did with some of my friends was we sat down, we put in every single source of income that they could find, because sometimes you are able, now that you're at home, there are certain things that you're able to do to generate income. I know some persons who have been surviving off of the sale of face masks, for example. And not to say that, you want to stay in that situation forever, but it's still a way that they were able to make ends meet until they could get themselves back on their feet. So we've been discussing budgeting and documenting your expenses for the past year and some. So
We
hopefully
have.
by now persons, yes, I talked myself dry where that is concerned. So hopefully persons have been documenting their expenses and have an idea of what is absolutely necessary and what, as Shane would have mentioned before, what you have to turn a blind eye to. Because when you are living in a situation where you do not have steady income coming in, your expenses are going to become bare minimum. So that latte that we spoke about when we first came on, that is very likely going to have to go through the door. And you're going to have to start making your own home. That
Right.
luxury is no longer going to be something you can afford. And I know it sounds very harsh, but unfortunately, losing your job is a harsh situation. So the conversations are going to get difficult. What is it in your expenses that you absolutely cannot do without? So you have to make sure your children are taken care of. You have to make sure that you eat. You have to make sure there's certain things that you know you cannot live without. Those are the expenses that you're going to document. And once you do that, you have then your kind of worst case scenario facing you, and you can see then how many months will this severance last me if this is how I'm going to be
Mm-hmm.
spending money every month. And some persons are very surprised by the figure where sometimes they see they only have 3 months left to be able to figure out what their next step is. Some people may even only have a month. So this is why it's so important to have this kind of planning done early, because you don't want to go off on a false comfort that you have a great set of money sitting down and that you're going to be fine. And not saying you're not going to be fine. Mentally, you're going to be fine. You are going to get through this, but you need to put in the work to plan towards that very different future that you're now going to be experiencing.
Okay. What is a good cushion, though, Crystal, for persons? I know we're focusing on surviving and thriving, but especially for persons who've lost their jobs, but we don't know who it will happen to next. So, what is a good cushion? What should you be trying to put aside? You know, if you're having a baby, people usually say 3 months' salary. What is a good cushion in these
Mm.
circumstances?
Traditionally, lots of texts have cited 3 to 6 months of salary. However, in my opinion, since 2008, when we had the financial crisis, persons have had difficulties finding back work within that 3 to 6 months. So the
Yes.
benchmarks are there as a general guide, but everyone's personal circumstances are going to be different. So, for instance, someone that's in the tourism sector, for example, may need a lot longer than 3 to 6 months, which means that your mindset is going to have to change, because if you're not going to be able to get back a traditional job within that space of time, what are you going to do in the interim? And you don't want to wait until your money has run out to try to start thinking up of alternative plans.
Yeah.
So I've been looking into even I've been seeing a lot of entrepreneurship workshops going around. The St. George community has been putting out one for free, which I signed up for, and it's a lot of work. And Ernst & Young has also put forward a free EY webinar. So I would encourage persons to go on these websites, to go and look for these things and sign up if you have to, because those 8 week webinars and seminars that are absolutely free could help to give you the foundation that you need to be able to come up with an alternative plan if you do not get back a traditional job within the time frame of the funds that you have available.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Crystal. Good
Indeed.
information, as always. We appreciate it.
Of
I think
course.
we can go to do a part three, Cassandra, on this situation
Yeah,
because I'm seeing
We
as
have
I
we
go
many,
might
many,
very
across.
many
well.
parts to this situation. There's a lot of
Yeah,
advice that I've been trying to pull together and as practical as possible. So even the workshop that I signed up for, trying to share with persons these kind of resources, because you need to start thinking about these things now instead of pushing it back until the last minute, because the amount of work that is required for you to, and I have a financial background and it's still a lot of work with everything else that you have going on. So you want to make sure you get that work in from early. Do not sit down hoping that this situation is going to get better. You have to make sure that you
Okay.
are putting in the work.
Okay. Thank you so much. And we look forward to that next chat, always giving us some wise advice. We appreciate this. So I hope that you found it helpful.